Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3. In this video, I'll be sharing a little bit about discussion board posts just to give a little bit more context for those since we have one due this week. And then I'll be going into the articles a little bit on multiculturalism. All right, so a few thoughts. So for this week, the first, or your original response to the discussion board prompts is due on September 7th at 11:59, and then your peer responses, the two responses to some peer posts, are due by Friday, the 9th of September at 11:59 p.m. Just a couple thoughts. It usually helps not to just post your original post on Wednesday and respond to two peers on Wednesday and then be done with it for the week. So what happens if you do that is, often peers might on Thursday or so might respond to your post. They might ask you questions and you won't see it. So make sure that you're kind of engaging more than just one day. Uh, yeah, so that you can be responsive to those questions. It's something to be aware of, to be looking back at that. Yeah, and I just encourage you to be thoughtful, around, like, I'm not asking you to write a paper or a novel in your original post. I think around like 250 words or so is a good kind of estimate of where to be at for your post. Uh, but yeah, just being thoughtful of, what's standing out to you, what personal reactions you have, what links are you seeing between, other students' posts or between, the readings. So, and particularly with peer responses, not just saying like one or two sentences, just kind of superficial, kind of maybe going in a little bit more detail, going in a little bit more depth to maybe ask them questions and kind of expound upon what they have written and talked about. So just a few thoughts there. Also, so for this week, the textbook, we aren't reading any chapters from the textbook. There's 3 articles that are in the learning module in the required readings folder. So there you can access the required readings for this week. All right, so with that in mind, I wanted to go over just a few general thoughts from the articles. I'm kind of mixing at least the first 2 articles on the multicultural counseling competencies and, kind of developing your multicultural orientation articles, and then I'll talk about the what is queer theory article. All right, so the multicultural counseling competencies, this is really what I want to highlight. The articles go into other areas and kind of are going to touch on different things that I don't address here. But I really find, the 3 areas of gaining self-knowledge as a cultural being, gaining knowledge of client backgrounds as cultural beings, and then, understanding how do I culturally intervene, or how do I intervene in a culturally appropriate manner, and how might I advocate. So I think those are 3 important areas when we're looking at the multicultural counseling competencies. And the self-knowledge is first. It's important for us as counselors to be knowledgeable of who we are as cultural beings. What are our cultural traditions? What are our norms? And, kind of the groups that we're a part of and how they influence us in our belief systems. If we're culturally humble, we're willing to kind of look at our culture, look at who we are as, individuals, and that practice of having humility to and just kind of patience with ourselves to examine ourselves is really important, so that we're clear of how we might, it's important to know who we are so we don't impose our beliefs and traditions on others. uh, so that then leads to, if I'm better understanding myself as a cultural being, because everyone is a cultural being, everyone has a cultural context, everyone has, cultural influences, and that then allows us to start to be able to better understand, okay, now what's my client's cultural background, what's their cultural context, what beliefs, traditions, rules, unspoken and unspoken, inform how they choose to live their lives. And the groups we're a part of, the social identities that we have, are really important to think about, and how those influences, you know play into our belief systems and who we are as people. So yeah, self-knowledge, knowledge of client backgrounds. And that doesn't, imply a perfect understanding. We don't necessarily have to become historians or perfect scholars in every single I guess, or like social identity group. Uh, but, we need to challenge ourselves to continue to be ever learning about culture and its connection to counseling work. So then the last area, assuming that we're having this insight about ourselves and others, then it's, how can I intervene in a culturally appropriate manner? So a few ways of doing that, like one example is broaching. So broaching kind of has to do with, how can I broach a topic? How can I bring up a topic that's culturally infused? Uh, so, for example, I was working with a client who she self-identified as Latina, and she married a white man, and she was often experiencing microaggressions. So, in the Multicultural and Social Justice Counseling Competencies article, it defined microaggressions as brief daily assaults experienced by marginalized individuals that could take the form of verbal or nonverbal forms of behavior. So, those brief kind of daily assaults. And I would add to that definition that those could be intentional or unintentional. I think that's part of the brief daily assault is that they're small kind of picks at as it says a marginalized individual. So yeah, this client of mine was often saying how her mother-in-law, she was experiencing like these brief daily assaults of just like kind of these messages that she wasn't good enough, or she's coming from a background that what we're I'm trying to remember some of the exact phrases. Like the mother-in-law would say something like, "Oh, you're not like other Latinas." And so so it just kind of implies, well, what does that mean? What are other Latinas like? What am I like? So it's just kind of these weird messages kind of that she would be experiencing. And so I approach this topic as kind of saying, it kind of sounds like you're experiencing these microaggressions or these, and then I kind of describe what that is, and the client felt, yeah, like absolutely. And she said, you get it. So I think that was important and validating for her. And so what broaching does is sometimes clients might not ever address cultural dynamics or cultural elements, or they might not know if it's safe to bring that up. But if the counselor does, then it kind of opens that door to that realm. And I think that's what happened with this client. It's like, okay, so this counselor is open to talking about culture and to talking about privilege and oppression, and experiences of these brief daily assaults. So I think that's an important element to be considering. Is like, what is our role as counselors to open up the climate to be able to discuss culture in an open way. uh let's see. I guess another thought that, so becoming, it's kind of hard when we're talking about multicultural counseling competencies. Like, when do we ever become competent? Like, we've arrived at being multiculturally competent. I don't think that necessarily exists. It's more just like a consistent journey. It's more like kind of a way of being that, like, that we have a lens to look at culture. That, like, so I, as a clinician, I believe culture is important. Culture impacts who the client is, their experience in the world, their mental health. So, but I don't necessarily feel like I have it all figured out. I'm still learning about myself as a cultural being, with years of having conversations. Like, new things keep coming up, and with clients, like, new dynamics, culture's ever evolving too. uh so once again, it's kind of more of a way of being than it's just like, it's not like something we just do and we're done. It's a box that's checked. It's something we're always reflecting upon. uh so now I kind of want to shift to the What is Queer Theory article. A couple things that I wanted to mention. The article is written in kind of an interesting way. It's kind of hard to tack down exactly what is queer theory. But the philosophy undergirding queer theory is social constructionism. And so there's this idea of modernism, postmodernism, social constructionism. So modernism is more like that there is a reality, that reality exists, that truths exist, and they're knowable. We can, or they're at least we can get close to understanding what truths are, and we can live accordingly. Social construction kind of is on the opposite side of this spectrum. It's saying, there are no truths. uh, every like, truths are just socially constructed. As social groups, we construct and build reality. So that would basically then kind of imply that, then there are no capital T truths. That there's no one way of viewing the world that is right. It's just a lens. It's just a constructed way of viewing the world. I've heard some people kind of challenge the idea that there is no capital T truth. Is that kind of sounds like a capital D truth, that we're saying the truth is that there is no truth. But I digress a little bit. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of like, I'm obviously simplifying social construction down a lot here, but that's kind of the general idea that as social groups, as cultural groups, we create reality. We construct truths. We construct the way in which we view the world. So queer theory kind of, relates to this social construction. Uh, so, in particularly, the language we use is kind of how we go about constructing reality. So the stories we tell ourselves become our reality. And a lot of times clients are telling themselves they have an inner narrative, an inner story that they're bad, that they're not good enough, that they're unlovable, that they aren't safe around other people, whatever it is, whatever story they're telling themselves that's been constructed, not like and a lot of times there's reasons why those constructions occur. Experiences have happened to kind of shape that inner narrative. But then, as we continue to tell ourselves these stories, that becomes more of our reality, and our truth is kind of the philosophy behind social constructionism. So the idea is, if we can alter our stories, if we can alter our language, through the counseling process, then we can start to kind of alter our inner experience and our outer experience. So queer theory is really about being a critical thinker and challenging societal norms and traditions and identities, social identities, particularly like gender and sexual identities, really challenging you know supposed realities and viewing them as maybe these are just social constructs. We've created these identities and these ways of viewing gender, sexual orientation. So yeah, so reality and truth, in the end are constructed through language and can be deconstructed. Uh, so I think another element of this, of queer theory, has to do with linguistic violence. So linguistic violence kind of, I'm wondering what that means to you all. It talks about it in the article on the second page, but kind of reflecting on that, what linguistic violence could mean. So in the article, it says that it's linguistic violence when we impose language on people that is different from what they use, especially when it has to do with their identity. Refusing to honor clients' language is a refusal to understand how language matters to them. So the authors are basically saying if we deny the client's frame of reference through our language, if we choose not to kind of embrace their language, then it's denying them. I kind of have some different reactions to that. Like, I think that in one side of me, that absolutely makes sense. That there's this reality that they have, and they need to feel heard and honored and respected. And maybe our frame of reference is different, so we don't necessarily have to just kind of give up our frame of reference and always adopt every single client's frame of reference. So it's almost like this balance. It kind of goes to values, that as counselors, we're not saying we always have to adopt the beliefs of every single client. So we're just kind of wandering aimlessly, just jumping and clinging to different clients' beliefs. We can hold our own values and beliefs and our own perspectives. But it's saying, how is my communication? Because as counselors, our words are our interventions. So how am I honoring and helping and doing good for the client through my words? So it's I believe that it's really our duty, our ethical duty, to be very, very thoughtful of how are we communicating with our clients. Is it enhancing who the client is? That doesn't mean we can never challenge clients, but are we honoring them and respecting them and doing good to them? Are we always coming from that intent? uh, so yeah, this kind of surfaces a lot of different beliefs. And let's see, one quote that kind of has to do with this linguistic violence, or also this linguistic creation and construction that is the kind of the root of social construction, is on page 2. It also says in the article, power flows through language to produce meaning and to create worlds. So language has power, according to this, to queer theory and social construction, that once again, obviously, if our language constructs reality, then it holds a lot of power. uh but I think this is pretty relevant. I don't think it's a mystery that there's a lot of different beliefs and challenges in society about, you know, sometimes people feel that, their voice is being stifled, that they can't say certain things, that they have to hold certain beliefs. Uh, but how can we also just kind of, I guess some people are almost getting this feeling like, how can I honor freedom of thought and expression while also still honoring others' freedom of thought and expression and their lived experience? So I think it's almost like we're grappling in our society of like, how can we respect each other? We're different, we're going to have different beliefs, and that's okay. But sometimes it doesn't feel like it's okay in some discourses that are going on. Uh, and I just want to highlight, that it's okay to disagree with elements of the articles. Like some of, like, I guess honestly, me, I don't necessarily align, in full with social constructionism. I do kind of view that there are some realities and some truths that, as like a human collective that apply to a lot of us or all of us. Uh, but it's really important to be able to chew on these different approaches and make sense of them and kind of sit with them, because our clients are going to like really come from different perspectives than us sometimes. uh so some clients might really resonate, whether it's conscious to them or not, with social constructionism and with some of the theories that we're going to be talking about, and then not others. But we have to be able to sit in a space to be with clients, even if their beliefs are very different than us. I think that's really, crucial. Uh, but yeah, if you're experiencing any like personal reactions to the articles, I think that's a good thing, and that's okay. You don't have to believe every single thing, and you can make sense of it. Please reach out to me. Talk to me about it. Talk to other supervisors and other trusted others, other instructors, because that's going to be an ongoing thing, particularly in your clinical work. It's going to be important for you to kind of make space to talk about your personal reactions. And culture can be a really kind of an important area when culture is surfacing. Often that's where sometimes there's big reactions that are surfacing as well. So once again, cultural sensitivity is important, but it also doesn't mean that we have to walk on eggshells, or that we aren't holding to our core beliefs, that we're being asked to just kind of give up beliefs. It's not saying that. It's asking us to be reflective on our beliefs and being really thoughtful and developing more of a critical eye. uh, in the end, I really view cultural sensitivity and these competencies as moving us towards being thoughtful, respectful, and almost like as if we're being asked to hold two or more truths or realities at the same time. We have our reality, clients have theirs, and there's going to be other realities and perspectives, and we don't have to say right or wrong, which one's right or wrong or best or better. It's just they are, and they are different, and that's okay. We can hold that and make sense of that and just respect people. uh so yeah, I guess those are my thoughts for today. I look forward to the discussion board and to learning together. And I encourage you to be kind and compassionate and respectful with yourselves as you think about these areas, as well as with each other. I think that's really important, particularly in the discussion boards, but also just kind of moving throughout the program. So yeah, thanks for this week, and I look forward to more engagement in week 3.